Good afternoon, folks. It's sort of hard to compete with lunch, I know, but I think you'll find that it's worthwhile to focus some of your attention on the screens here. I'm here to introduce Shadrack and Pretty Kubyane from Coronet Blockchain. This next presentation is really brought to you by the power of the community. So we were first introduced to Shadrack and Pretty by a member of our transformational technologies group, John Morris, wherever you may be at this moment. Thank you very much for the intro. So we've had several meetings with Shadrack and Pretty, who are the co-founders of Coronet Blockchain, and we learned an awful lot about the disruptive and positive potential of blockchain technology through those discussions. Me, and I think many of us, tend to think about blockchain as synonymous with cryptocurrency, and today blockchain resides in that advanced technology stage where it's a technology in search of practical use cases. Shadrack and Pretty have made good on that practical use case. And with their first venture, they proved this potential and then some. Their solution was for the hair extension marketplace in Africa and beyond. It's been disruptive of the traditional supply chain and also highly successful. Rapid growth in Coronet blockchain-based market has been built on the technology's ability to provide provenance, traceable records to secure transactions, and trade financing for small business owners. So in their next venture, Pretty and Shadrack, along with some participation from InsightaaS, are looking to extend many of the lessons learned in the personal beauty industry to tackle a much larger community problem. By 2035, Africa's population will have doubled, and although there's no shortage of arable land on the continent, a food crisis looms as small farmers who represent the bulk of the Sub-Saharan African producers are typically excluded from traditional markets. Can blockchain help? Shadrack and Pretty will tell you more about the technology and how it can help the small farmer, as well as a larger community of stakeholders who can use the data produced to create an alternative food value chain. And we're hoping by having you folks here, Shadrack and Pretty, thank you so much for helping us out today. We're hoping that this solution can also be instructive to a community of agricultural technology consumers here in Canada as well. So with that intro, thanks so much and take the stage.
Thank you kindly. Thank you so much. I think I'll ask Pretty to share our slides and then we will delve into it. Are you able to see our screen?
Can you just chat with them?
Just wanted to confirm if you're able to see our screen, our shared screen, our slides.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We'll go right into it. Over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. We are very excited to be sharing the eMasimini concept with everybody today. For the benefit of time, I'm going to allow Shadrack to introduce both of us. Hopefully you still know me and my background.
I think I remember your name. Thank you. With that being said, eMasimini being blockchain or technology for social good, a bit of background on how we got here. Just using the rule of three, a summary of how we got here, even as Mary has already alluded, We both hail from a rural background in South Africa. That's where we grew up. We usually say in the backyard of South Africa, and that's where it was quite exciting. What we also share in common is that we both grew up in family-owned businesses in agriculture, automotive, meaning the fixing of cars, and of course, wood cutting. I usually say I married yours truly, the woodcutter's daughter. So that's the genesis of our beginning and upbringing. And fast forward beyond school, we both ended up in corporate, although on either end of the corporate landscape. She was more on the corporate social investment, ensuring that social impact inclined investment, they are utilized for the purposes for which they were released. And she was basically the go-to between the investor community and the rural communities that they are intending to impact. Myself, I was more in corporate, into bringing projects to market. My last corporate role was with Deloitte. And of course, if you fast forward to when we co-founded Coronet Blockchain, it was truly out of an incredible need where African-based small businesses that make up 99% of all the businesses in Africa, they're either in the informal sector or they're in the small business capacity. They needed a mechanism to be included into the mainstream economy. Hence, blockchain, as we will unpack, was able to close or rather fulfill the need at that nexus. That's a summary on how we got here.
Thank you so much. Just a quick background on the evolution of farming, and later on we're gonna get to learn where blockchain actually comes in. As we both grow up in rural areas, we were just at the tail end of the sustenance farming community, and our communities were moving towards commercialization of everything. So in the beginning, our forefathers, they used the bartering system, and they were quite as a self-sustaining economy, where if the other person is farming tomatoes, the other one is raising chicken, they will be exchanging those goods. And sometimes even this exchange of services, like I remember both our parents, yes, they paid a lot of our teachers with a chicken so that we can get extended classes for education, and some families would save up and sell cattle to send their children to tertiary schools. So that's how they lived. So there was very low, legal to no import bill at all, as everything that they needed was within their own communities. Yeah. So from there became, because of the boom in the mining of the mining industry, now it meant that most of the fathers and the brothers, the people that were actually heading the farming, the sustenance farming operations, they had to migrate to mining towns to go and work in the mines. So now, because there's a shortage of manpower within the community, so what happens, the few men and young men and others that were heading farming communities, they came together, they formed what they called ilima. So they'll call them amalima, because there were these groups of collaboratives. Like my village, we have about 400 households. So we'll divide it by 4. So the groups of 50 families will ensure that every family they have access to tools. They will share tools together. They will have access to farming methods. So they will transfer the skill and the know-how to the now female-led small farming operation. And they will share their workforce as well, because certain families only had 2 members. Yeah. So that's what happened on this. And while we were still acclimatizing to this reality, now there was a food market, there was a mass marketing of food, where a big supermarkets that sold food started opening. Now there was more demand of food for commercialization reasons. So now they had to collaborate again, but not for consumption this time. They had to collaborate again for production. So these particular business models, they were an idea of the government where 5 families will come together so that they can join a workforce, tools, and their land so that they can have a bigger production output, as mainstream retail always want volumes to ensure that there's that quality, that consistency, and that value in the products that they are selling. And this model, even though has been working, but not that well because of the community behavior. In Africa, we collaborate better when we consume. I think we spend about 50 billion every year to put together monies to plan for Christmas. We call it stock fills. But when it comes to stock filling for production, now we don't collaborate very well, and that's okay, because later on we're going to get to learn how the blockchain technology can help us to achieve collective results without really having to partner and work together. The technology will do the working together.
Yes. Thank you kindly. So yes, as Mary has already alluded in the introduction, whilst there are major developments that are quite positive on the continent, such as the unfolding population boom, that is not without its challenges, because with the population doubling in a couple of Saturdays from today, we will be at, in a number of Saturdays, we will be arriving at 2035. That 2 billion continental population calls for a redress on our food security with intentionality, just thinking ahead and thinking, we are monitoring our food import bill. It is rising from $45 billion back in 2018. Now it is heading towards $110 billion by 2025. And as you may be aware, just as recent as a day or two ago, Canada joined the other members of the global economy to say, well, we may love Shadrack and Pretty that much, but they shouldn't fly into Canada. So thanks to the effort to regulate people and goods movement in light with the current pandemic that we are experiencing globally, very understandable. However, when it comes to pandemic proofing our communities, when it comes to future proofing our communities, no community, large or small, can afford to have a large food import bill, because just like Pretty mentioned earlier on, in the olden days, self-sustaining communities were the norm, so that when we travel globally or when we bring in things globally, they are not so critical as to impact our day-to-day. We need to just live from inward outward rather than outward in. And with that being said, if you look at some of the farming monopolies that really necessitate blockchain to intervene, we have a scenario where 6 million commercial-sized farmers on the continent of Africa are actually creating bottlenecks very intentionally to try and hog trade volumes and hog trade patterns in their favor at the expense of the 33 million smallholder farmers. Now, as Mary has mentioned before, we have been laying the foundations in the past couple of months leading up to eMasimini, which is the land of possibility and of course, waking of the fields when it's translated, in order to leverage blockchain, leverage data for social good in the interest of these smallholder farmers. We may not be beginning with 33 million of them. We will be localizing our implementation in a specific locality that's very well known to us, where we have got a social capital with the elders, with the unions, and with those that are really the gatekeepers to ensure that as we bring in tech for social good, there is that social capital component to ensure a clear runaway. And with that being said, Africa is home of some of the biggest supply chain inefficiencies. Just to put it in perspective before Pretty leans forward, At the harvesting point, most smallholder farmers lose 20 to 25% of the produce. And when that same produce that was salvaged enters into the supply chain, another 20 to 30% of the produce is lost thanks to a lack of proper methods and mechanisms or clear monitoring of where the cracks are in the supply chain. And that's where blockchain comes in to just bring in that see-through supply chain effect from farm to the table. And it's interesting that you're actually having lunch now and we are talking about food. So it is important that if Pretty and I were to procure food from a smallholder farmer or some crops and send them all the way to Canada, that they make it to your lunch table. And that's where blockchain comes in, that if there's any deficits in between, blockchain being that decentralized ledger is able to consolidate and bring in that transparency and accountability effect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So not all is bad because we have a growing domestic market as we are gearing to reach that 2 billion population by 2035. So which is a good thing, because when you increase or optimize a production, when you already have a big market and a big demand, it's very easy to actually, you fixed a lot of things because you can't really create the demand itself. If it's already there, we really are looking, things are not looking that bad. Secondly, we have 60% of the global arable land actually exists in Africa. So that's a very great potential as well, that we see things looking up. And as of 2021 in January, we launched the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Within it, it allows at least 90% of the things that are produced within the African continent to be able to pay, to be duty free when they are trading among each other, which means that the elders are actually creating policy, or there's an existing policy that are making it easy to trade with one another.
Yes. And with that being said, from a high level, using the rule of three, we are looking at just tackling the three largest pain points on behalf of the smallholder farmer. So eMasimini being, what do you call it, the working the fields, bringing blockchain and leveraging data potentials, we are able to bring about transparency and accountability for the smallholder farmer, because as Pretty mentioned, there's been great collaboration on the consumption end, but the collaboration culture sometimes tend to buckle when it comes to collaborating with the big picture in mind. Thanks to resources like blockchain, trust can now be outsourced. Trust can now be leveraged through the decentralized ledger, enabling collaboration where it was not possible at large scale, bringing in the government role players, the stakeholders, the input material suppliers, and of course, in the best interest of the smallholder. If we enhance the transparency and accountability, then from a stakeholder perspective, even the end user or the retailers that are procuring these items are going to sleep better at night. We standardize the quality, we monitor the quality, and we ensure from a franchise perspective, we ensure consistent outputs throughout the value chain. Even though smallholders could not quality assure at that level on their own, blockchain democratizes and avails those quality assurance mechanisms. And of course, as a collaborative tool, the see-through supply chain effect in real time can enable the vetting and, of course, the working together from the smallholder farmer to the food safety expert to the farm manager and all the other stakeholders that are around that plot of land, either digitally or in person. And of course, access to markets. Smallholder farmers have been lamenting access to the economic dinner table or to the economic lunch table. They were walled out. I don't think it was, or rather our findings show that it was not clearly only due to monopolies, but it's because the smallholder farmers could not leap over the barriers to market entry, such as quality assurance, consistent quality output, and consistent produce, including food safety. So blockchain is democratizing that by the availing of the decentralized ledger that finds them equipped already with devices from laptops to cell phones that can plug into the DLT ecosystem.
Thank you so much. So the great place to start, because during our many years into access to market, one of the things that we have come to realize is that a number of exceptional technologies, when they are introduced to market, from design itself, it was designed not with the mind of those that are supposed to actually use it, meaning that there's a tendency to impose great technologies without actually observing what is the culture, how are people working, how can we use technology to facilitate what is already happening instead of pressuring people to change extremely, but the use of technology can actually help them to facilitate and consolidate what they're already doing. With that being said, the focus on creating and making sure that this program is designed to solve real pain points that are really important to the small scale farmer. When you ask them what would a successful year look like, the technology should be able to help them achieve that. The second part as well, when it comes to supply chain, because there's a lot of interest and everybody is looking for their interest. That's where politics actually would come in to play, when you don't create tangible value for each stakeholder that you invite into the supply chain, making sure that your value proposition as well speak to each stakeholder to ensure that they would participate, so that we can have a very effective ethical supply chain. And the last part as well, in order to get the buy-in now on a bigger level, is to ensure that we align ourselves with regional priorities, because what we are creating is in line with what the Continental Free Trade Agreement wants to achieve. It is in line with the agenda of what the continent by 2063 want to have achieved. It is also in line with the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So what we are doing doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is a part of a bigger deal. Designing it from the word go to make sure that it is aligned to that will help to get a buy-in very easily.
Last but not least, some of you maybe, or rather most of you may be familiar with this proverb in Africa, a child. And quite often it takes a global village leveraging potential, leveraging capabilities such as the Canada to Africa alignment, such as the blockchain to data alignment, and such as our laying sound foundations with Mary and Michael building up to today to ensure that a very rural specific for the smallholder farmer blockchain solution to lower the barriers to entry, to enhance quality standards, and to be inclusive for the smallholder farmers that have been locked out of the room while Africa is gearing towards a food insecurity. And on that note, before I wrap up, we actually have a culture as a business and a family to look at our Saturdays. We are only 682 Saturdays away from 2035, January 1st. So these aspirations that we are sharing, they are not that far away. They are not 1,000 years away. It's only 682 Saturdays away. And with that being said, we are quite open to seeing on the other side of the discussion, how many of you on the other side of your lunch could go like, you know what, perhaps we might come on board as well. And as Mary and Michael often say, it takes a community to do a heavy lifting on a scalable level. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shadrack and Pretty. you've captured many of the discussions we've had beautifully, succinctly, and elegantly, as you always do. So thank you so much for your presentation. It's such an important initiative. I was struck as you were speaking by how many times you introduced subjects that repeated themes that we talked about earlier this morning. But using technology to solve real pain points, using technology to create tangible results, and also the importance of observing culture. Change management was a subject that Paul Cooper, for example, talked about a lot this morning. It's not just imposing technology. It's not just having technology. It's having the vision to understand where you can apply it and where you can apply it to solve real problems for real people. It does take a global village. And I'm very happy that we've had some kind of African-Canadian alliance on this. And I really look forward to moving forward with you on this. I'd like to say, Michael would like to have a word too.
Thanks. And to everybody tuned in, I first got engaged in this project before it had a name, before it had a structure, because the looming potential human catastrophe associated with doubling of the African population in combination with the food production constraints that global climate change is likely to have struck me as having a potential for human catastrophe that was just unimaginable. And yet, throughout your entire presentation and throughout every conversation I've had with both of you, you've been entirely upbeat, entirely positive, entirely focused not on the looming black clouds of despair and danger and death, but on the bright sunshine of we can help make things better. We can help enable gender equality, better health, better food security for a population that is regional to Africa, but is global in nature. And I'd like to thank you so much for infusing all of our conversations with that sense of hopefulness and achievement and forward thinking that you brought to this presentation and that you brought to all of our presentations. Thank you.
Yeah. And just a quick note to people in the audience who are in the atrium, but also who are joining us virtually. Stacy, could you put up our last slide? Because on the last slide, we have contact information for Shadrack and for Pretty, and contact information for me as well. We invite anyone who is interested in learning more about the eMasimini project or about Coronet Blockchain to get in touch, and we can help you with any questions you might have. We also are looking for support. It takes a community, and we would be really pleased if we had some of the forward thinkers that are in the room and online step up to provide some input to this very, very worthwhile initiative. So with that, I think we're done. Thank you so much, guys. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you so much. To be continued. Thank you.
Yes, to be continued. Bye.